Dear friends, every year it is incumbent upon the pastor to give a financial overview of the parish economy, what I refer to as the finance glance. So here goes. We finally got audited by the diocese because of all the COVID restrictions. This was put on hold, and usually happens especially when a new pastor comes in. Antoinette, who works in the diocese, is always looking out for our interests, and she gave us a very thorough report dated September 8th that covers the fiscal years 2017 to 18, that is to say July 1st to June 30th, to 2021, 2022, that fiscal period of 5 years. And I can report to you very happily that we did very well on that report. The parish net operating income increased by more than 100% despite the COVID-19 lockdowns. The offertory went up by 1%, and there was a 60% decrease in the operating expenses, mostly because we were shut down for several months, or we were doing masses out in the parking lot, so our expenses went way down. And happily, we were not put in a position where we had to let go of any of our employees. In fact, the salaries and benefits stayed the same, even though there was no raise that was given really for the past 3 years. The cash flow for the parish has increased by 50%, and all of our diocesan obligations have been met, meaning the parish assessment, I call the catharaticum, which is the money you give to the chair, the bishop, so he can fund the administration of the diocese and all the salaries and benefits of those who work for us. We've been able to pay our insurance, our priest health and pension, and basically we're in pretty good shape. But before you start to think too rosy of a picture, it sounds too good to be true, it really is, and I'll explain why in a couple of minutes. But no matter what, the generosity of all of our parishioners, each one of you, even with all of these COVID protocols and restrictions that we had to put up with from church and state, you have been so wonderfully generous and determined to keep the parish going during this difficult time that has hopefully passed. And so I'd like to offer my profound thanks not just to you, but also to our Finance Council, particularly to Francis Cruz, who was the head of our Finance Council for 5 years and did a wonderful job. He has been succeeded by Rita Santos, who is now the chair, along with Cliff Howard, Evelyn Sampson, Jim Brown, and our newest member, who is a CPA, David DeFusco. They are a blue ribbon panel of business professionals who offer their services in part to keep me from doing something stupid, because my background is not in finance. And so the requirement of the church by canon law is that there be a finance council, and we're very blessed to have a very good one. The happiest outcome of this 5-year period was that we were not put into a position to lay anybody off or eliminate any of our jobs. And also, the reason why we look so good, in part, is because we got 2 payroll protection plans from the government that are loans that were forgiven. They were for $39,000 each. We got 2 of those. And then, unexpectedly, this is part of what Antoinette and Tom McNamara do in Sacramento. They figured out that we could get a check for $58,000 for employee retention. Don't ask me where all that money comes from. There's probably some little man in Washington, D.C. that's printing it constantly, but we're very grateful that Uncle Sam has such deep pockets. Also, one of the biggest things that has happened that has been for our benefit is that we have finally paid off our Capital One campaign debt. The Capital One campaign was started years ago. I don't even know how many. It was the bishop's campaign to raise a whole bunch of money, millions of dollars, in part to retrofit and spruce up the cathedral and all kinds of other stuff. We were originally assessed for that campaign by $1.2 million. But the people before me sweet-talked the diocese and then getting it down to $800,000. And then finally, they accepted the goal of $500,000 if we were determined to pay it off, which we have now done. So that means that we are less a $10,000 a month payment. And so one of the things that we had to hold that over our heads was because you were working on getting rid of the mortgage at the same time. So I'm happy to say that both of those debts have been forgiven. Of course, our biggest expense are our employees' compensation, budgeted for this year at $377,600. The great thing about that is that we have a wonderful staff. Gemma, the office manager, is incredibly competent in running our parish and all the financial things that have to go on, payroll and paying the bills and writing out the checks, among keeping all the records for your tax returns and for the sacraments. We have Virgil, our engineer, who is very knowledgeable about the nuts and bolts. And we have Shelley, our new faith formation director, who is wonderful, and Casey, our new youth minister, who just had a retreat this weekend for some of our teens. About a dozen of them went on the retreat that was run by himself and his wife. We have Valerie and Ann in the office who are part-time, who assist. We have Sandra, Diana, and now Paul in our custodian department. And we have Vince Tidinko, our cook, who makes a meal for us 4 times a week, the 3 Carmelites who live here. We also have our assistant formation director and kind of a person who's all around doing all kinds of things, including helping sing and assisting in different ways, Anna Alberici. And then we have 2 full-time Carmelites here, Father Jose and myself, and then Father Mario, who's retired. He's on the gravy train for the province of our Carmelites, so we don't have to pay him a salary, but we still get to have him doing ministry here. And also, we outsource our bookkeeping to Janine, and our lawn care, our groundskeeping to Santiago, who is the person that's been here the longest. And of course, I can't forget Mark Middleton, who is our music director, who helps us to worship God very well and beautifully, and takes care of our extra liturgies for funerals and weddings and all the extra things that we do during the year. So we're very lucky to have all of them with us. We have many expenses, as I see when I sign checks, which seem to be endlessly coming forward, but we have to pay for hosts, we have to pay for copy paper, we have to pay for water bills, we have to pay for music royalties, and on and on and on. As you well know, everything price-wise is going up. And when gas and milk prices rise, the collection usually goes down. But again, thanks to all of you, we are very, very blessed. Our collections have been very good, and they have even gone up a little bit. But certainly, it is because of folks like you who are very faithful in giving to the parish, supporting the parish, that we are able to do all that we do. There are also many who are returning still from the COVID scare, some who have yet to return, but we are starting to come back to full steam. We also have many new faces, people that we welcome still, joyfully, and we want you to really feel at home here and to be a part of the parish in different ways that ministries are available to you. So thank you for giving Our Lady of Mount Carmel a chance. Online giving is a very important chunk of change that helps us with our operating. And so if you would like to enroll in online giving, there's some information about it on the website and in the bulletin. Also, we will be delighted to help you do that in the office. Gemma or Ann are very good with the computer. I'm not, so I can't help you with that, but we would be very available to you by our staff if you wanted to do online giving. Meanwhile, we in our Finance Committee have seen the real need to move on some of our deferred maintenance projects, bearing in mind that we are trying to stay ahead of inflation and predicted rising costs, especially for labor. We have such a beautiful church, I don't think anyone can dispute that, and parish plant with the dome and the 2 residences that we own, where Father Mario lives in Berkeley Street and Father Jose and I live in Priory 1 over on San Antonio Court, all of which need to be cared for, maintained, and improved. The great thing is that we've been able to accomplish painting our buildings. I don't know about you, but I am so delighted by the way it turned out. Church looks like it's brand new. Remember when it was built, be 20 years ago this next year, 20-year anniversary, that only 1 coat of paint was put on the church because they ran out of money. And so after all of the weather, all of the soot from the fires, all of the calling cards of the buzzards that live on top of the roof, you know, it was looking very shabby. And I don't even think we realized how bad it was looking. It's the picture of it on the Catholic calendar before it was painted. Remember that these projects that are always coming up, because they always will, just like in your own home, are funded by the second collection we take on every first Sunday, which is our own capital improvement fund. So thank you for being so generous to that fund, knowing that we couldn't do these extra things beyond our operating that come along unless you continue to support that fund. It cost us about $130,000 to paint everything, and it's well worth it and beautifully done. And so I'm absolutely thrilled by the way that it looks. Thanks also to the Pastoral Council for helping pick out the colors, and for all of you who also put a little input in when we painted the outside with different colors. Mostly, whatever you do, don't use that color. So we kind of went more neutral. Our Priory 1 on San Antonio was given a new roof, which we had to do because the heavy tiles that were on it before were so old and they were not energy efficient. And so we put on a new roof that also enabled us to put on solar. That cost $70,000, but $28,000 of it was given by one single very generous donor. And so now our electric bill is around $27 a month instead of what it used to be, which I don't even want to tell you what it used to be. Priory 1 also had windows upstairs replaced to make it more energy efficient, and they're actually working on the stucco on the second floor to get it ready for the paint to be finished. If you want to go over and look at it, it's painted the same color as the church, so you'll see that it's part of our parish facilities. Also, we widened the sidewalk on the east side door and ramp so that we can have an exit that's more convenient to the parking lot, so you don't all have to converge and rub up against a bunch of people and touch a bunch of doorknobs. But remember, it's only for exiting, because otherwise the whole church is going to be lopsided. And this project cost about $10,000. Again, $4,500 of it was donated by just one person who is a little handicapped and needs to come through the door if possible. So if anybody is handicapped or elderly, you can always come around and open the door for them to enter, but we don't want to use it as an entrance door because the architecture of the church is a certain way. Also, if you do use that door during Mass, please make sure to shut it quietly because it clangs like, very loud way. So thank you for being attentive to those things. And now the priorities that we have now that are on our plate is that we have to do something with the sound system. As you know, we've been tinkering around with it, but it's hopelessly outdated and on life support, and we need about $22,000 to replace it, which we've already requested from the diocese. We can afford that now. And the other thing that I'd like you to know is that we have put in a sound enhancing app that can go on your smartphone, and then you bring your own phone buds or earplugs, and you can hear what's being said up here very clearly. The app is called Listen Everywhere, and it can be downloaded on your phone very easily. If you have any trouble with that, Virgil we'll show you how to do it. I'm just worried that some of the teenagers are going to come in with their headphones and really going to be listening to rock and roll during Mass. Probably some other kind of music that's popular nowadays. And the other works that are looming are that we eventually are going to have to change out the lights in the church to LED. Some of our controls are non-functioning, and that's going to cost a lot of money. So stay tuned for that because we're going to do that later. And then also you can see when you go out, the parking lot has a lot of cracks in it, needs to be resurfaced, and the lines need to be repainted, and that's going to cost a little bit of money too, of course. And finally, the debt. When I came as pastor, I was actually here for 2 years before that, the debt was about $250,000. And this debt that I inherited was from very worthwhile things. For example, $80,714 are still left on our debt for the carport with the solar that keeps our energy bills in the church in the dome very, very, very low. But we're still paying on that. And then the parking lot fence that was put in, that's very helpful to us to keep our place safe from vandalism and from people who break into cars and dump out garbage all over the place. That is a very good thing for our parish. And then the roof on the church had to be replaced a couple years ago because it was leaking badly. And so we still owe about $30,000 on the roof and fence, $80,000 on the solar. And we also took out a loan for COVID from the diocese because we didn't know how bad it was going to be, and we wanted to have the safety net of a $100,000 loan, which we have not had to use, and so we're simply paying that back. We still owe about $25,000. So our debt's been reduced from $500,000 to $132,624. Thanks to you. Thanks be to God. And so this not having to pay $10,000 a month for the diocesan campaign made the diocese happy and makes us happy too. We have always met our obligations, and the only way that we can continue to do so is that by all of you pitching in and remaining faithful as you are to the stewardship of our parish. Remember, the Catholic way of giving is 5% to the parish, 5% to all the other ministries that you support through the second collections, and of course the very important annual Catholic appeal that does so much good work on behalf of all of us. Finally, the St. Vincent de Paul Society is always getting from the plate, the general collection, 3%. This money goes to help out parishioners and our neighbors who are falling on hard times, many of whom were in almost desperate straits during the COVID time. And so not only our 3% that goes to St. Vincent to help pay for food, for rent, for utilities, but also the Carmelites of our province have given last 2 years $14,000 to this fund. And hopefully we're going to get another grant as well this coming year. So if anybody here is in need, don't be afraid to ask for help. Also, thank you Thank you, thank you, thank you for all of the ways that you give and support. If you would like to see these figures on paper in black and white, please visit Gemma in the office, and she would be happy to give you a copy of the fiscal annual report from last year. And please, if you are planning your will or estate, remember Our Lady of Mount Carmel, because when we were in the midst of COVID, at the height of it all, a very devoted and beloved parishioner died, and the family gave us $48,000, which gave us a whole lot of breathing room, not to mention a lot of relief from the anxiety of not knowing what was going to happen as far as the finances go. So please remember us in your will, if possible, that your parish would definitely appreciate whatever bequest would come our way. Whether it is time, talent, or treasure, you make it happen. That we are all visible signs, not just individually, but as a community, of the life-giving and loving and joy-filled way that Christ's disciples can be in this world. Like St. Paul today, who is going to soon be executed, he's encouraging and giving inspiration by his own life and hanging tough when the going went tough, and encouraging his young protege, Timothy, who now has to step up and take over. We too hear those words, and we too, like Timothy, are determined to keep the faith, to stay in the race, to fight the good fight, and to pour out our very selves like Christ showed us how, come virus or high water, as all of us together advance toward the finish line.